never been hit the way I'm about to hit you. I promise you, whether it's to the head or to the body, you've never felt this before.
Keith one time Thurman admits on the Porterweight podcast that he had a short training camp and that he only sparred 2 times in preparation for the fight against Brock Jarvis in Sydney, Australia. We got to talk about this. I knew it, but let's talk.
A real fight question, Sean.
Oh, God damn it.
Ask me how many times I sparred for this fight.
Oh, snap.
Uh-oh.
How many times you sparred for this fight?
Maybe about twice.
Damn.
I had 2 sparring sessions for this fight.
What's up, boxing world? This is Raw Boxing Magic. We back, and it's a movie. Now, Keith Thurman had went on record speaking of how this is one of the shortest camps that he had, and that he kind of got this fight on short notice because it was up in the air, and it was talks of fighting Brock Jarvis back in December. That fell through, so Keith Thurman wanted to reiterate the fact that he's clamoring to get back into the ring, and so he calls and he makes the reach out in the attempt to ask, hey, what's going on with the fight? They get back to him, and then they come up with a date, which ended up being March 12th in Sydney, Australia. So on the Porterweight podcast, Sean Porter asked Keith Thurman what percentage did he think he was coming into the ring. So to be frank, if I can keep it real for a minute, can I keep it real for a minute? I'm gonna keep it real for a minute. This man Keith Thurman just jumped up off the couch, bro, and whipped Brock Jarvis' ass. He hopped up off that couch and whipped Brock Jarvis' ass. 2 sparring sessions, but this is very telling, and it makes a lot of sense to me. And I said it when I watched what he did in the first and some of the second round. I said, he looks a little sluggish. He looks a little bit thicker around the midsection. His reaction time, his speed on the jab wasn't as fast or crisp as before. Now, I've went on record of saying that Keith Thurman never really had a spectacular jab. His jab was never that fast, never that snappy. When he did use it, it definitely was effective. But he does not have the best jab, right? So Keith one time Thurman goes in and tells Sean Porter that I only had 2 sessions of sparring, and this was a short camp, which explains a lot of what I seen, along with the fact that obviously he has some ring rust, being out of the ring for 3 years, right? But that is a telltale sign that in the next fight, it might get spooky. It might get dark for Tim Tszyu if that's Keith Thurman's next fight. And I'm going to tell you why. Keith Thurman with a full training camp, with adequate sparring, knowing that Tim Tszyu is no pushover, and he's not on the level of a Brock Jarvis. Oh, this is dangerous. If Keith Thurman did what he did to Brock Jarvis, showing that he still has the power, and he turned on that killer instinct as well, right? It's been a lot riding on this comeback, and there's been a lot of haters, and there's been a lot of talk about once upon a time. Keith Thurman has endured a lot in the last 3 years as far as people not respecting him as the fighter that he once was when he was the unified champion, right? And that's what he felt against Brock Jarvis, which is why in the Brock Jarvis fight, for the most part of the buildup, you can see that And I pointed it out. Keith Thurman seemed a little bit out of character when it came to how much like he was using curse words and how angry he was. But now that I think about it, you know, he had a lot of pent up frustration, and he was really pissed about not being in the ring for that amount of time, and also having to pull out of the fight against Tim Tszyu in 2024 March. Now, Brock Jarvis, since the beginning press conference, Brock Jarvis had no respect for Keith Thurman. He told him he's old, he's over the hill, it's over, you don't have any legs anymore, you're not the same anymore, and just writing him off like he's nothing. I think writing the narrative that people concocted, saying that Keith is done because we haven't seen him, and that, you know, he's retired and he's over the hill, which couldn't be further from the truth, right? Because we seen what Keith Thurman was able to do hopping off the couch. You know? So it might get real spooky for Tim Tszyu with a locked in Keith Thurman. Keith Thurman did not have a strength and conditioning coach for this fight, right? I don't know if he has a proper nutritionist or cook, but the strength and conditioning coach that he had when he fought against Mario Barrios, he was cut up like a bag of dope, bruh. Keith Thurman was cut up like a bag of dope. He was built. You can see it. He was putting in the work. We can see it. He was trim. He was cut. He was explosive. I thought he was a little tight, so I think he would have to kind of level the amount of weightlifting and weight training that he does. But with a strength and conditioning coach, just picture him at 154 pounds with a proper training camp and a proper strength and conditioning coach. Oh, it's a different, if Keith Thurman is able to do what he did, albeit against Brock Jarvis, but it still proves and showcase what he can do. He still had hand speed. He still had punching power. He still had movement, angles, ring IQ. We seen glimpses of everything that Keith Thurman is that night. Everything that Keith Thurman has ever brought to the table, we caught a view and glimpses of that for as long as it went on. I mean, because he stopped him in the third round, right? So we didn't get to see a full 10 or 12 rounds of that. But I think it could get real spooky and real dark for Tim Tszyu with a honed in, because, mark my words, Keith Thurman is not going to play with Tim Tszyu. He's not going to come in there on with no short camp. He's not going to come in there not sparring sufficiently. He's not going to come in there without the proper strength and conditioning training and without the proper diet. He's just not going to do that. He's going to take that serious, and this is going to be a dangerous Keith Thurman, a preserved, dangerous, fired up Keith Thurman coming off of a knockout. A fired up Keith Thurman getting his confidence back and just being in the ring, being back in the ring and being back in the limelight. And, you know, because the lead up to the Brock Jarvis fight was magnificent. I mean, you couldn't pick anyone to promote that fight better than what Keith Thurman did. That is the best that you can get. Everything that he did was clicking on all cylinders. And then you would have to look at this and say, well, wow, you know, if he gets in the ring with Errol Spence, if he gets a fight with Tim Tszyu, or gets a fight with Jermell Charlo, Fundora, maybe even Crawford, he's going to be able to sell that fight to the maximum. To the maximum. There could be no one better. Keith Thurman is great for boxing, and Keith Thurman brings the fire in the ring. It's not like he's just talking. He's not like Adrian Broner. He can sell a fight, and then when he get in the ring, it's just trash and ass. That ain't what Keith Thurman is bringing. That's never been Keith Thurman. Every fighter he's ever been in the ring with, He stung him every fighter he's ever been in the ring with. He's had a wonderful performance. So going forward, I think a locked in Keith Thurman, and this, we're going to see a different Keith Thurman. Do not expect the Keith Thurman you just seen. Even though he knocked Brock Jarvis out in spectacular fashion, do not expect that Keith Thurman. Expect a more explosive Keith Thurman. Expect a quicker Keith Thurman. Expect a more responsive Keith Thurman. Expect a more cut up and more physically, aesthetically, or having the aesthetics and the physical of muscular, similar to how he came in the fight with Mario Barrios, but just at a higher weight. Because I'm sure he's seen how fast he was moving, and I know that he probably felt slightly slow with that extra weight that he was lugging around. But this time he's going to be a little bit more trim, and it's going to be different. Expect a more ferocious Keith Thurman in his next outing. But by now y'all should know my temperature. I don't do no faking or no frauding. That ain't my texture. I love y'all. I'm out.